Hello and welcome to the Today's Homeowner Weekly Podcast. We're here to help you with the challenges we all face as homeowners. I'm Danny Lifford.
And I'm Joe Truini. And each week, Danny and I are here on the podcast to answer any and all home improvement questions.
And we want to hear from you. Send us your questions or comments at todayshomeowner.com/podcast.
Okay, Danny, let's get started.
Today's Homeowner Podcast is brought to you by the Home Depot. How doers get more done. This week, we have a number of things that you might be dealing with around your home. Surely you have a few LED lights in your home. Are they acting a little quirky, especially if you're trying to dim them? Well, we'll tell you what you might be facing. Also, do you have some dark paneling in your house? Does it look maybe not as good as it used to? We'll tell you some ways to revitalize it. Also, icicles. From a distance, they look pretty cool, but not if they're lingering over your head. How can you prevent icicles? Joe will tell you that he's dealt with them his whole life. Also, spring is around the corner, so you might be thinking of a pergola or a shade arbor. We'll give you some thoughts on that you might have never considered. Also, Joe, what about that simple solution coming up?
I've got a trick on how to draw a perfectly round circle using not a compass, not a length of string, but a wooden yardstick.
Oh, man, that's very intriguing. Hey, I'm anxious to get started. Let's go. Right now, we're going to head up to Illinois and talk to Chuck. Chuck, welcome to the Today's Homeowner Radio Show.
Well, thank you.
Tell us about the LED lights here. You've installed a few of them, having a few little problems with them. They're a great way to go, but they are a little quirky. Tell us what's going on there.
Well, I installed 10 what they call wafer lights, LED wafer lights, in my daughter's dining room, and I control them from 3 different places. I have a 4-way switch, a 3-way switch, and a 3-way dimmer. And the first dimmer I put on was a 150-watt dimmer for LED, 150-watt LED, and it was flickering. So I thought maybe it wasn't heavy enough, so I got a 300-watt LED dimmer.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And it didn't work. It worked about the same. So neither one of them worked very well. They both flickered, and they're both name brand lights. They weren't cheaper ones. They were the nicer ones. So that's my problem.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you, when the transition took place, which took a little while from incandescents and moving into LED, it took a little while because the darn LEDs were so expensive. Now that they've gotten more reasonable and more of the mandates in phasing out the incandescents, these are some of the little points of learning curve that a lot of us have gone through on these. Joe, what do you think on this? Is it the bulb or is it the dimmer you think that Chuck's having trouble with?
Yeah, Chuck, I'm not exactly sure why this is happening in your home, but I do know that LEDs, there has been a tendency of them to flicker or even dim down and then get bright again when there are voltage fluctuations within the system, within the electrical wiring system. And they can occur when electrical loads get turned on and off, which creates these fluctuations, such as there's a thing called inrush current, which you may have heard of. It's when certain appliances kick on the motor, refrigerator, freezer, clothes, dryer, that kind of thing, and it causes a voltage drop. And that in itself can cause the lights to flicker a little bit. And plus LEDs, these lights are operated by, they have electronic drivers in them, and these drivers are susceptible to what electricians call noise, and noise is nothing more than these fluctuations, voltage fluctuations. So let's say that's it. What do you do about it? Well, that, not being a licensed electrician, I'm not really sure. You can call an electrician and tell them, listen, I think it's because of these fluctuations in the voltage is causing this flickering, and he may be able to tell you something. I mean, I'm not sure, but I know all of what I just mentioned does happen because of fluctuations. Are there other reasons? That I'm not sure of.
All right.
I wonder if it's loaded up just a little bit too much in terms of that particular circuit. You have 10 LEDs, but you almost wonder what else is on that particular circuit that may be, working against you on that. So there again, an electrician, or if you're comfortable with electrical, to really diagnose how much is on that particular circuit, it may indicate that a load, like a refrigerator kicking on and affecting it, or something along those lines that might be doing that. So it might be something to dig into to really track that exact circuit and how much is on there.
That sounds like a plan. I'll try that, see what happens. Thank you very much.
Hey, our pleasure. Thanks so much for being with us here on the Today's Homeowner Radio Show. We got a lot of issues on LEDs over the years, but I think they're about to get them figured out, and thankfully they were able to drive that cost down. I remember seeing one of the first LED floodlight bulbs that I have, that I first saw,
Right.
and so I asked the person that sent it to me, because they wanted it to be on the show. I said, by the way, what's the retail price on it? Kind of silence. Hello? Hello?
That's always a bad sign.
We're introducing this at $65. Is that like a 10-pack? No, that's just one. Wow. Good luck on your success with that. Dennis, what you got?
Well, I was just thinking that, with certain electronics that I use in my studio and here, sometimes when you do have those power fluctuations, I hope Chuck is still listening, you can get a power conditioner. That will help that. And I was just looking it up. I'm not sure. It must affect lighting probably easier than it does with sound equipment and things like that. So I think that would be a good thing to, maybe he could Google that or even ask an electrician about a power conditioner.
There you go. Great suggestion on that, because that can kind of even out everything a little bit. And there's so much happening in today's home with the electronics and all of the different signals and the wireless. I mean, there's all kinds of things going on. I still don't know how they can figure out how to isolate the frequencies for like a garage door. You still expect to try to turn on your TV and your garage door goes up and down. So who knows
Well, remember they used to, when they first came out, the first 2 or 3 generations of garage door openers, thieves used to drive around neighborhoods just pressing buttons on their garage, and they would sooner or later find a garage door that would open, because it didn't have unlimited codes. And so they started a technology, I think it was called rolling code, where it actually, every time you use your garage door opener, it rolls the code over that only your remote will open the door. But who knows? Yeah. But with these LEDs, they forced this technology, and you have to do it, into the existing systems we had for electrical lighting, and whatever problems crop up, they just solve them as they go along. Remember, they used to not be dimmable at all. Right. And they realized, well, we aren't going to sell many of these if we can't dim them because they're so darn bright. So they'll work through it. I think you're right. They'll work through it, and pretty soon we won't be getting any calls, I suspect, on problems with LEDs.
But it is interesting when something changes like that, because that's a big deal when you start hearing that the government or different regulations are going to phase out incandescent lights. You go, wait a minute. Now, how can they do that? Give us a choice, but you can't. But then, it's all about saving energy and saving energy as an entire country and so forth. And so it's been kind of funny how they've gone along with that. Just like going back to the toilets, that, the 1.6 gallon toilets versus the 3 gallon. Now, when you look back on it, you go, hey, this works fine. I mean, first generation didn't work out very well, just like LEDs now. And so it becomes, after a while, it does take a lot of years, it becomes somewhat mainstream for American homes. Let's head to Michigan right now. Mark is on the line. Mark, welcome to the Today's Homeowner Radio Show.
Thank you, Danny. It's a pleasure. Love your show, and more so, I love your southern drawl that's so full of peace of mind and reassurance.
Wow, that's a great way to start a call. I appreciate that. We have a lot of fun with it, and of course, we have the other accent with Joe Truini to kind of balance it all out there, don't we?
Yeah, I didn't say anything about his.
Yeah, Mark, you now have to call every week. Danny's going to make sure you call every week.
Exactly. I'm glad you did call, though, Mark, because when you're talking about paneling in homes, there's still so many millions of homes that have paneling of some kind. Tell us what's going on in your home.
Well, I have a lot of oak paneling that we put up a long time ago, about 40 years, and certain areas of it has literally just lost the color. And I was looking at trying to find a way to put some color back in those areas, but not having to redo the whole thing. But I knew you guys would have the answer.
Well, it can be a little tricky. Now, I assume when you're talking about paneling of that age, would it be the sheets of paneling, like the 4x8 sheets of paneling with the vertical grooves in them?
Yes, that's it exactly.
All right. Well, of course, there's when they're manufactured, they're stained, they're coated, and naturally, after over the years, that coating can start kind of evaporating, wearing off, or whatever. And aggressive cleaning of it. Sometimes the UV damage that you have will break it down a little bit. But to match that stain, like matching any situation with cabinetry and so forth, to come back in with a stain to try to even out those areas can be really tricky. Joe, Joe, what do you think about some of the like English oil or some of the things like that to kind of, again, I always talk about like moisturizing it like you would your car dashboard. But what do you think? Should that be the first step for Mark?
Well, yeah, the first thing you have to do obviously is clean it before you put anything on it. And you might discover just cleaning it brightens it up a little bit. And you could use like Murphy's oil soap, anything that's used on a wooden floor. We often talk about a series of products from, what's that product? Rejuvenate, I think is the name of that company.
Yeah, Rejuvenate from Bonna.
From Bonna, B-O-N-A. They have a whole line of wood cleaning products. And I think they certainly have ones for wood flooring, which you can use on the wood paneling. And so now you'd have to be I wouldn't use anything too abrasive because this is probably a veneer. It's not solid wood paneling, so it's probably a thin veneer over plywood or masonite. But I would start with a good cleaning. If you wanted to just try a diluted white vinegar in water, I mean, that would work as well. Otherwise, I think I'd get a commercial wood floor cleaner and use that. And once that's clean, then you can get an oil, a wood oil, and there's lots of different types out there that are just made for revitalizing wood.
Yeah, we've done a lot with the Murphy's oil soap. We've cleaned it, over the years. But This is literally, there's no pigment left there.
I wonder if you've removed it all. I mean, you could step up. You could step up to something like TSP, which we usually recommend for cleaning any surfaces prior to painting, and that would clean the surface really well. My only concern was, is it going to make it more dull? But if it's the last resort, I guess I would do that. What is the ultimate goal? To revive it to its original color? You're not looking to change the color, right?
No, I'm not looking to change the color. Just put some. It's like the wood grain. You can still see it, but all the color is gone. So I didn't know if I should, apply a sealer and then try to match the stain.
Well, I think it would actually be the opposite of that. And here's something that I've tried before is to go and, first of all, take a picture of what you want it to look like, whatever the kind of undisturbed area is. Take that with you to the home center. And then buy 3 or 4 of the little tiny, tiny cans of stain. Right. And then you can come back and kind of real carefully open one and then just take a little rag in a kind of out-of-the-way area where you're having this issue and then just put that on the actual paneling and see if it's compatible. And I think by the time you play with 2 or 3 of those stains, you'll find one that is pretty close that you can very carefully kind of blend that in and just step back with some good lighting and look at it. And then after you get it blended in well, let it dry sufficiently. Then if you come back over it with a polyurethane, then you've locked that in and saved it for another 40 years.
Well, that's what I needed to hear, Danny.
Okay, Mark. Well, thanks so much for being with us. But just try some of those little cans. You'll be surprised. It's almost kind of fun experiment to blend that in. And just think about how proud your wife will be when you complete this project.
Oh, I'm going to be a star.
There you go. Well, thanks so much for being with us, Mark. Love talking with you, and hope to talk to you again.
Yeah, next week.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you very much.
Time for our best new product segment, brought to you by the Home Depot, where doers get more done. Now, if you're like me, raking leaves and gathering the leaves, though it can be satisfying to see what it looks like from start to finish, it's still kind of an aggravating process, especially picking all of those leaves up. So we've got something that will help you out a little bit. I mean, the raking is tedious enough, but then there's all the bending and stooping to pick up all of the leaves and get them into some kind of container to dispose of them. It's a dusty, dirty job that seems to take forever. Well, that frustration was the inspiration for the Effortless leaf collector. They're sold in pairs, and while they may look a little bit like an oversized frog feet, when you use them together, they make the chore of picking up leaves much easier and much more effective because you're able to pick up a lot more leaves with every scoop. They're less bending, less effort, and less time scooping, and it means you can have a little time to do something else. And you know what? I'll bet you have one of your children in the home that would love to put the old frog feet on and help you out. It's called the Effortless Leaf Collector, and you can check it out right now and order a pair at HomeDepot.com. You know, so many things to do with home improvement have to do with the weather. I know about 20-something years ago, I started as the home improvement expert for the Weather Channel and still continue to do that today. And so many times, it's so easy to relate things that you have going on at your house with what's happening with the weather. And right now we have Mike from Illinois with a kind of a unique problem that happens this time of the year in Illinois.
Hi there. Well, it's about 5 below just outside of Chicago.
Wow.
And I'm looking at icicles outside my window. I tried knocking these down yesterday, but the question I have is icicles and their formation. Is it because you don't have enough insulation? And why is it that they appear in some areas of the roof and not others? And what do you do about it?
Well, I'll tell you, Mike, over the years, I haven't had that much of a challenge here in the Southeast and to the Deep South, but the Icicle King himself, we'll bring him in right now. Joe Truini can tell you exactly what's going on. What is it? What's happening, Icicle King?
Yeah, thank you. That's an honorary title, Mike. Danny doesn't get many icicles in South Alabama. Imagine that. But you mentioned one of the causes, and actually you also answered part of your other question, is why they appear in one place and not the other. The two most common reasons that icicles appear is because of insulation and ventilation. You have to have the correct amount of insulation, and you have to have ventilation, because if what happens is as snow falls on your roof, it warms up during the day, or the temperature is high enough. Or if you have bad insulation, heat, if you don't have enough insulation, heat is rising from the home. But in any case, it's warming the underside of that roof, and a little bit of snow will melt down. Sometimes you don't see it because it's melting under the blanket of snow, but it melts down the roof. And it would be great if it went into the gutter and drained out. But what happens is when it hits the eave is overhanging the house. So, of course, there's no insulation, and it's very much colder than the rest of the roof, so it starts to freeze. And then what happens is it fills the gutter, drips over the gutter, causes icicles, and in extreme cases, it can start, the icicles will form and the ice will form in the gutter so much that it forms a dam, meaning water cannot flow over the ice, and it starts backing up the roof, which is an ice dam, and then that water, of course, will leak into the house. So there's a lot of reasons why icicles, although as beautiful as they are, you don't want to see icicles hanging off your house.
Right.
And of course, Mike, there's the other problem is if they're hanging over a doorway, and first they could fall off and possibly injure someone, but more importantly, they melt onto the step. They freeze at night. You walk out in the morning, and it's incredibly slippery. And I've seen a lot of people fall because of that. They clean the steps. They thought it was clean, but of course, the icicles drip water and it freezes and overnight. So what do you need to do? Well, you need to check, make sure you have enough insulation in your attic. We always say no matter where you live in the country, hot or cold weather, you should have anywhere from 14 to 16 inches or so. But you also want to make sure it's not jammed in so tight at the eave that it's blocking any air from going up through the soffit vents and up into the attic where it can escape. So that's basically what you need to do, is increase the insulation and the ventilation. And the other thing, I'll tell you what I do here in Connecticut, is I went out, and I recommend this, Mike, I went out and bought a roof rake, and I rake the snow off the roof. As soon as there's more than about 4 inches of snow, I get out there, and it's very satisfying, by the way, and I pull the snow. It's basically just a aluminum blade, looks like a piece of metal about 4 inches, 5 inches high, and 2 feet long. It's got a long handle, has little rollers on the bottom so it don't hurt the shingles. Just pull the snow off the bottom 3 or 4 feet. And eliminating that snow eliminates the water that could back up the roof. So those are the 3 things you need to do.
Yeah, that's a tough thing because I'm in a 2-story house.
Right.
And getting up on a ladder in these conditions is pretty treacherous.
You don't want to do that. But I can tell you, I bought one online. It's from a company called Garelick, I think. It's like Garelick, Garelick. And it comes with, I think, a 16-foot handle. Each section's about 4 feet long. You snap it together. And I bought 2 or 3 extra sections. You can buy extra 4-foot sections. And I can reach way up on my roof. It's got to be, almost 20 feet, 25 feet from the ground. Yeah, now do not get on a ladder.
Isn't it top heavy, though, when you get that high?
It's all aluminum. It's relatively light. And once it sits on the roof, you're not actually holding it up. You're just pulling it down. Don't pull it off the roof. You just pull it and the snow will come off and roll it back up the roof.
That's true. So if I want to beef up the insulation, should I use blow-in or bat or a combination?
Well, I would prefer the bats because it's very easy to install yourself. Got unfaced bats. Just carry it up there and lay it perpendicular to the joist and fill in as much as you possibly can.
Okay. And how often should you re-insulate an attic?
Well, I don't think you ever have to re-insulate an attic. Sometimes with blown in, you have to insulate if it compacts if it settles down too much and it doesn't have any air, because it's the air that actually forms the insulation.
Okay.
All right, so
Well,
get to work,
hopefully
Mike.
Some of those things.
I got my work cut out.
And also, Mike, as a byproduct of it, you're going to be saving money on your energy bill summer and winter if you're adding that insulation there. Because we always say adding insulation to your attic really is about the best return on your home improvement dollar that you can do. So that'll be a side benefit for all of that. Mike, thanks so much for being with us on the show, and hope you have a great weekend.
All right, thanks. You too.
Pro Extra is the Home Depot's free loyalty program built for pros. Members earn perks just for shopping, like new Pro Extra dollars or tool rental perks. Get exclusive benefits every day that save time and money. And here's an extra, $20 off your next in-store purchase of $200 or more, just for signing up. Want to save? Join Pro Extra, only at the Home Depot. How doers get more done. Visit the Pro Desk in-store or at homedepot.com/proextra for details.
You know, Joe, we have such a diverse country, and there
sure
are
do.
situations where there's places in the country right now that are just have so much snow. Other areas are already looking at spring. That's what's happening down in Florida with Lori, and thinking about a shade cover. So, Lori, tell us all about it, and welcome to the show.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much for taking my call.
Certainly.
We're thinking about building a pergola in the back with timbers like 6-inch by 6-inch. And the question is, do you know if there is a simple way to connect the timbers?
Okay. Well, there's several different ways that you can do that. I mean, certainly the half lap, cutting your post that you would be supporting them in order to support that. But I'll tell you, over the years, I have seen, because of the popularity of shade arbors and pergolas, I've seen so many manufactured brackets that make it so much simpler, but also it adds a little element. I kind of like that almost industrial, strong look to it. Joe, I know in your shed book, Joe wrote a tremendously successful shed book. You kind of dealt with that in terms of some of the ways to work that out, huh?
Yeah, Lori, in the book, we show many different methods of building a shed, and for a timber frame structure, and the pergola is not unlike a shed in that regard, that you have a wooden skeletal frame made out of larger timbers. The traditional way, of course, is with mortise and tenon joints. But those are pretty tricky to cut, and I think a lot of DIYers probably are a little intimidated by cutting mortise and tenon joints. So manufacturers have come out with metal pieces of hardware. And in the shed book, there's a company called Connex, and that's spelled CONNEXT, Connex. Mm-hmm. And they make a line of easy to install connectors. They're made out of structural aluminum, and they're painted black, or they're somehow anodized black, so they're not bright silver. And they can be used to join almost any frame part together, post to beams, beams to rafters, to joists, beams to beams, whatever. If you go on their website, I don't know the exact website, but if you Google Connex post and beam, I'm sure their company name will pop up. And can I ask so you're building this out of timbers, and where is it going? Is it on a deck, on a patio? Is it connected to the ground somehow, concrete footings? Because that might matter as well.
Well, we're thinking of putting it on the patio if that's possible.
Okay. Yeah, no, the patio would be a great spot. First of all, a concrete patio is a great starting spot, but people always want to do something else to it once they have it, right? Tile it, stain it, whatever. So building a pergola on top of it. In fact, Connex, if I remember last time I checked out their website, they sell 1-inch thick blocks. I think they call them HDPE blocks, which stands for high density polyethylene. Basically just thick blocks of black plastic. And the idea is you put those down on the concrete first, then you use the connector to fasten through these blocks into the concrete, and then you put up your vertical wooden post. And the idea is you keep the post off the concrete and the metal, the aluminum, off the concrete. And I would highly recommend using those because, even in Florida, there's going to be a lot of moisture and rain, no snow, but everything else. So you want to keep, no matter where you live, in fact, it's always a good idea to keep wood off of concrete.
Wow. Sounds like something I should definitely check out.
Yeah, it's a little hard to explain over the radio, but if you go to the website, you'll see they have all different types of connectors, angled ones and straight ones. And they also sell the tooling if you need to buy something for cutting the timbers or slotting the timbers or whatever. Mm-hmm. And you put these in. By the way, they have holes in them, and you slide them in. You just drive in these, I think they're 1/2-inch diameter aluminum pins, and they go right through it. And that's what locks everything together.
That sounds like exactly what I'm looking for. So I will definitely check it out. Appreciate it.
Great.
It definitely sounds like a great look, though, when you have that steel in conjunction with that. It looks strong, but also just has a nice accent on it. So, Lori, best of luck on your project, and also hope you have a great weekend.
You too. Thanks.
I'll tell you what, if you're, experiencing a lot of bad weather and maybe you're inside a lot wondering what to do, I'll tell you a way that you can not only use up a little bit of that time, but gain some tremendous home improvement knowledge. Just head over to todayshomeowner.com/simple solutions. What you'll find there is over 500 60-second simple solutions of some of the most common things that you run into around your home. These are tips and tricks to really help you out on some of these simple things. Matter of fact, Joe Trevini has one for us right now.
Well, one of those tricks, Danny, is how do you draw a perfectly round circle when it's larger than your pencil compass? Of course, if you have need to draw a circle that's maybe, 6 or 8 inches, 10 inches in diameter, you can usually use a pencil compass. But for a large circle, I had to draw one recently, I think it was 20 inches in diameter. So what do? Well, you use a wooden yardstick, and here's how. Start by drilling a small diameter hole through the 1-inch graduation. And it needs to be maybe an 1/8 inch in diameter, maybe slightly larger, but drill it through the 1-inch diameter. And that hole will serve as the pivot point, right? Then you drill the next hole through the yardstick 1 inch beyond whatever your desired radius is. So in this case, I wanted to make a 20-inch circle, so the radius is 10 inches. So I drilled another hole, same size hole, at the 11-inch graduation. And it's 11 inches, of course, because the first pivot point is at 1 inch. So 1 from 11 is the 10-inch radius that you need. Anyway, so you just use an awl or a screw or whatever and secure the pivot point on your workpiece, then put a pencil in the other hole, and you basically just swing it around in a circle. And there's a video that's online right now at todayshomeowner.com/simple solutions showing a video of me doing this exact technique, and you just swing it around and end up with a perfect circle every time. And of course, you can then drill as many holes as necessary depending on the diameter of the circle.
And you'd be surprised how many times when you're really doing some home improvements, or maybe you're doing a little work around your shop, building a few things here and there, that a radius is really important in being able to have that perfect circle. And, we've talked before about if you got a paint can, or if you got anything that's round and that you can use to create the radius, but something that's like you're dealing with there that's 20 inches wide, I'm not sure. I don't know, garbage can maybe. I don't know what else you could do. But this, and also, if you're talking about a precise measurement, that simple solution will allow you to hit it exactly what you need.
Right. And you often may have seen people use a string, but strings stretch a little bit. And I used to use a string, but you start off in one point and by the time you get to the starting point, it's like, gee, what happened? Well, the string stretched out a little bit. And it's not only for whole circles, by the way. I've used this for arcs and half circles and, any part of a circle. It doesn't always have to be a full circle.
Yeah, because that like you say, the string stretches when you're doing that, but also you're having the challenge of keeping that pen or pencil exactly vertical as you're moving it around like that. So there's a lot of challenges in being able to do that. Another example of how a simple solution can make life a little easier and solve a lot of problems or challenges that you may be facing. Now it's time for our podcast question of the week. This one comes from Joe in California. I have a sink basin in my garage that is really old. It's probably been there since the home was built back in the 50s. I believe it's made of concrete and maybe some kind of metal. It's a 40 by 24 inch double side basin and it's cracking, so I need to replace it. So my question is, what is a good replacement for it? I've seen the plastic sinks, but they really seem kind of cheap, but any idea where I can purchase one? Thank you, Today's Homeowner. Well, thank you, Joe, and certainly there's a number of options there. First thing I think about, if you're really looking for something that's very sturdy like that, Joe, they still sell plenty of the cast iron sinks.
They do. The 3 materials that are most common, you can get cast iron. You can probably get a really affordable old cast iron sink at a salvage yard or someplace like that, architectural salvage yard. But the brand new ones that you can buy come in essentially 3 different materials. Polypropylene, which Joe had mentioned, which is plastic. You can get one made out of solid surfacing material, kind of like what Corian might be. Or, of course, you can move up to stainless steel. Now, stainless steel is probably the very best, but it's also by far the most expensive. Grainger, if you go to Grainger.com, the catalog that sells all kinds of building materials, they have a whole line of different variety. And if you go to the home center, I know at Home Depot, I saw some of the polypropylene ones. They sell them with the faucet attached and everything for well under $200. So that might be an option. And they might seem cheap and they're plasticky, but if you buy they come in like anything else, right? You can buy cheap plastic ones or more expensive plastic ones. If you get one of the more durable ones, I mean, unless you're going to hit it with your car or something, it's in the garage. But as long as you're pretty careful about it, and plus it's never going to rust. It can take some impact without cracking or chipping or anything like that. So I don't know. I would take a look at a really good propylene one. Otherwise, maybe the solid surfacing one.
And keep in mind on the solid surface, and particularly the cast iron, you're talking about a heavy, heavy sink.
Right. Yep.
So the sink cabinet may have to be reinforced, and you definitely will need somebody to help you position that in when you put it in place. So those are some other considerations, and hope we've been able to help you there, Joe, on making your decision on what you're doing there in your home in California. Hey, if you've got a question for us, a comment, or any thought that you would like to hear us talk about here on the podcast, go ahead and send it in right now, todayshomeowner.com/podcast. Really appreciate all those great reviews. I actually read a number of reviews that you took the time to write to us and write about the show. We appreciate that. And certainly if you have any thoughts on making the Today's Homeowner podcast better, we always would like to hear them. Again, it's todayshomeowner.com/podcast. I'm Danny Lipford along with my buddy Joe Truini. Thanks so much for listening to this Today's Homeowner podcast.